Hello, my fellow witches, sorcerers, and other magical practitioners. My name is Aiden, and welcome to the very first episode of Sky Snake Sorcery. This is our inaugural episode, and it is on magical burnout. This is an idea I have had the entire time this podcast idea has been really solidified, I should say. I've had this podcast idea for quite a while, but more specifically, I wanted to talk about the feelings of burnout, the feelings of imposter syndrome, as well as actual practical ways to deal with them, and going more in depth, especially because I struggle heavily with burnout in a lot of different fields. So it is something that is very difficult, and I think it's especially difficult for things like magic, where, for me at least, it is a very big core part of my life and identity. So this episode really, in all honesty, came about over the summer of 2024, when I was really starting to get this idea for the podcast together, and I was back living with my parents for a short time, and I was just so tired all the time. I was burned out, and I didn't really know what to do about it. I was actively seeking ways to overcome it for a while, and that's kind of where this episode was sitting for the time being, until I felt like I had enough tools and resources for myself to actually apply and overcome them. Hence why this podcast even exists in the first place, because I am forcing myself to be a bit more motivated, which we'll get into in a little bit. Magical burnout manifests in several different ways for me. While I'm not necessarily ever bored of magic or feel like I'm not able to progress, it's more of the feeling of not progressing. It's the feeling of I need to be somewhere more, or I'm not getting the results I need, things like that. That tends to be the way that burnout manifests the most for me. And it's stressful. Magic, sorcery, the occult, all these different things are what make up my special interest. So it's especially difficult for me feeling burned out on something that is so important to me that it makes up a big facet of who I am. Over the summer, I found myself really wanting to do things, but not necessarily being able to do them due to various constraints of money, living situation, things like that, as well as the fact that I moved across the country, the fact that I changed location, the fact that I had just graduated college, the fact that I was dealing with so many things all at once. It's impossible to not be burned out on everything during times like that. But what I struggled with was giving myself grace. What I struggled with was allowing myself to be burned out. And I realized that there was a lot of unhealthy coping mechanisms. There was a lot of not actually giving myself what I needed. And a large part of that was not knowing what I needed, because I didn't understand advice that was given to me, or I felt like I couldn't properly apply it. So I wanted to give this first episode over to really discussing not only my experience with that, but give some advice for how to overcome it. I also want to say that I'm not perfect at this. Burnout is really difficult for me. And it's something that is an everyday struggle. It is not a you're done once and it doesn't come back ever. It is something that you have to combat actively. But here are what we'll get to, some active combating skills, reframing, all of that. Obviously, I'm not a mental health professional. I don't have a degree in that. I joke sometimes about having a psychology degree. I don't actually have one. I just read a lot of books and have talked to people. please, 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 please do not take my advice solely at face value. Take it with a grain of salt. If you have a therapist, if you have another mental health professional who is able to help you more specifically with your problems, talk to them about that. Burnout affects all kinds of people, and while it might be awkward to talk about magic with even just friends, it's helpful to try and talk things out with people, to try and work through actively those things. So this is just my little disclaimer. I don't claim to have all the answers, and no one else should ever, by the way. So I guess let's talk about what causes burnout, especially in the magical sense. The biggest thing for me is massive life-changing events, which are always happening to me. I have a very fun natal chart. Those who know. Those who don't, we'll find out maybe potentially one day. We'll see. But I have very big life events happen to me, especially last year. I moved 3 times last year. I graduated college. I had a lot of bad stuff happen. We'll put it like that. Not going to be too personal. Experienced a lot of changes really, really quickly. And that caused me to be burned out on everything. That caused me to feel so stressed out, isolated, anxious, and all around, it made me feel like I wasn't doing enough. I graduated college. Why don't I have $1 million job? The answer is because the film and television industry is in a huge flop era, to put it lightly. But there is that pressure from all ends to be as successful as possible. Sound off if you are a gifted kid with burnout, if you are a former gifted kid with burnout, or you were the teacher's favorites, all these different things, or professor's favorites. It's difficult. It is stressful because you feel like you have so much to live up to. But when big life-changing events happen, both traumatic and even good life events, you have to take time to process them, both mentally and physically. I was changing environments so much over the summer, and as I moved around a bunch, my body literally had some crazy physical reactions to being in so many different places in such a short amount of time, which I love traveling. I love moving. I hate being stuck in one place. My body doesn't necessarily agree with that. And it's difficult too, because when you see other people being successful, and especially after they have big life events, like graduating and getting a job immediately, even though they're in a completely different field, even though they're not even in the art field at all, it feels frustrating. And that started to affect also how I felt towards things like magic, where I felt like even though I was in completely different living situations multiple times, even though I was literally all over the country, even though I had so much going on, I felt like because I wasn't keeping up with things, because I wasn't doing enough, which, by the way, I was doing plenty. I was not giving myself credit. I literally did a PGM Daimon ritual over the summer, woke up every day at sunrise, ate an egg every day, did 7 invocations, said an invocation 7 times, I should clarify. But said an invocation 7 times at sunset, made stronger allies with the forests, did all these different things. I still felt like I wasn't doing enough. I still felt like, I could be doing this, or, I could be getting these results. Results are a big thing that I think also causes burnout for people, or rather the lack of results. So the lack of spectacular results. That's a big thing, and it's something that I struggle with, because in particular I struggle with results for myself in money, especially. Money sorcery is something I struggle quite a bit with for a lot of reasons that I can't really get into, but it's a big stressor because, not to be political, shit's expensive and it's going to get more expensive. And I just got out of college with an art degree. So, super stressful, super not awesome. But I get results in plenty of other places. And I think that because this one area of life is so blocked for me, because I struggle with that in particular, it makes me feel inadequate. It makes me feel like I'm not working hard enough, which is untrue. This is both for myself and others out there. There is a big myth of not working hard enough in general in anything you do, which we'll get to in a little bit as well. But it is impossible to be winning 1,000% of the time. It is impossible to fully just never have a problem, never have an off day, never have something fail, because that happens. And it's important to take those failures, or in all honesty, they're not always failures. They just sometimes don't result the way that you desire. But taking whatever happens and reframing it, reworking it, retooling it, that is much more beneficial than crashing out, quite frankly. I know this from experience where I kind of just crashed out instead of looking over how I could not crash out next time. It's stressful, especially when it's those practical money results, when it is those job interview results, when it's more than just you not trying hard enough and you don't really know how to fully fix that problem, but you're trying as best as you can, and everyone thinks you're successful, but you don't feel like it. Raise your hand if you have imposter syndrome, because I certainly do. I have very severe imposter syndrome. It was funny, that's like 5 or 6 years ago. I don't want to think about that. A long time ago, in a friend group that no longer exists, I took a imposter syndrome test. It's stupid. It's not accurate fully at all. But I did find it really funny that I had the most imposter syndrome out of everyone else. And I think about that at night all the time. Anyways, imposter syndrome, if you don't know, is basically feeling as though your success is unearned, feeling as though you aren't qualified, feeling as though you haven't actually achieved anything. It is feeling like you're an imposter, like you're lying about your success, that you aren't being authentic, even if objectively that's not true. This can be the result of a lot of different things. For me, it's a lot of things, honestly. It's a very difficult thing to struggle with. In particular, it tends to affect women a lot, as well as trans, non-binary, and queer people, because in general, our experiences are continually invalidated. Just on the social, societal level, that tends to happen. So it tends to manifest a lot for people in those communities. And for me, it definitely manifests due to a lot of intersectionalities of my identities, but also because of just the shit that happened in my life. But with magic, it becomes difficult because I struggle with success, essentially. I struggle with accepting I've been successful at things, and I think that is a part of blockages that end up happening that lead to burnout, because even if you aren't 1,000% successful, even if you're 100% successful, 50% successful, there is some success there. And you can learn from that, not 1,000,000% success. You can learn from that. You can grow from that. You can change things. You can learn new things that will make it easier. You can go to people who can help you. It can feel isolating a lot, actually. It can feel very isolating to not feel like you're the success that other people say that you are. To feel like you have not earned any position that you have been given. You feel like you have not earned any compliments, any praise, anything like that. You feel it is unearned. That is the hardest part of imposter syndrome for me, because I do not like to accept any sort of praise, compliments, things like that. I just believe that they're not true. And that belief impacts my spell work and causes me to burn out. Causes me to doubt my experiences and validate some things. I sometimes even question things like legitimate initiations. Like, I know everyone else who is initiated is definitely initiated, but like, am I? Can I even really say that I am? It makes me feel inferior, and that inferiority leads to crashing out, which leads to burnout, which just leads to magic not working. The biggest problem is when I have to actually be kind to myself and I actually have to help myself, or else things aren't going to work properly, because that's how life works in general. Horrible, I know. But I think we've kind of done enough talking about the causes and talking about my own problems. Let's talk about how we fix them. How do we actually combat magical burnout? How do we actually lock in effectively? And how do we make sure that we don't crash out in the process? So, kind of right off of that last thing, remind yourself of success. I know I literally just said I don't believe in my own success, but writing out your successes is really helpful. Honestly, reading my old grimoires, my journals, whatever you want to call them, was really helpful. I have 3 full, what I call grimoires. I don't think it super matters what you call them. Barring traditions, barring all that stuff, blah, 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 caveat, caveat, caveat. But I have these 3 grimmies, right? And I've been in this process of making them, using them, writing stuff down in them since I was like 15, 16 roughly. I didn't put dates in the first Grimmy, so like it's kind of hard to determine, but I remember when some stuff was. So temporal landmarking with that, but it doesn't matter. What's important is that I've had these for a long time, that I've been working through them, writing stuff in them, recording experiences in them, recording conjurations, recording any information, dream signs, vision quests, all kinds of stuff. And in these 3 Grimmies, I have like seen my own progress. I have seen my own successes. I've seen where I absolutely flopped and failed, mostly when I was younger and doing all kinds of crazy shit, to put it lightly. But I realized that I've done so much, and that the things that I want to achieve, I've already achieved, and I don't know why I've been LARPing about not achieving them. But having them written out in front of me really helped me. And it can be helpful to write out your successes. If you don't have them like already accessible in like a journal, write out those things that you objectively were successful at. And it's helpful to include both magical and non-magical things. I used to do this every Lent when I was a Catholic, but I would write out on Ash Wednesday a whole paper of everyone and everything I was grateful for. And I would hold on to that and then burn it on Easter. It was really helpful to reference when I was a kid and going through a lot. It was difficult to really see the things I was grateful for, and to really see any achievement as an achievement. And while I'm a lot better on the gratitude side, it's a bit more difficult to sometimes see the success side. So having it written out, writing that out, forcing yourself to write it out too is really helpful because it forces your brain to reframe everything, to force itself to stop spiraling, to stop looping. Oh, I suck. Oh, everything is awful. Oh, I have like zero success in my life. Oh, I'm going nowhere. All these things that we feed ourselves or have been fed to us, or a mixture of both. It's important to forcibly stop that at times. And for me, writing that out is really helpful. Go figure, I'm a fucking writer. But it's super helpful to have it in front of you to read later because you can go back to it, you can reference it. It is a temporal landmark. It is a point in time where you were forced to recognize and accept that you were successful, to accept that I did a good thing. I am not a total fuck up. I'm not gonna crash out. And it is difficult to do, especially forcing yourself to write it out. But something else that you can do as well to both supplement and alongside writing it out is talking to your friends, your loved ones, favorite teacher in high school, favorite professor from college. Talk to them, talk about what you're struggling with. Don't feel like you're fishing for compliments. Also, don't fish for compliments, but don't feel like you're fishing for compliments by asking the people you care about to care about you, to uplift you and support you. That's been my biggest journey, honestly, is allowing my friends to support me, allowing my friends to actually help me, allowing myself to recognize my friends actually give a shit about me and give a shit about my well-being and that it's not a problem. Because I do that for them all the time, and it's never a problem. I never expect anything back from it. So naturally, that applies to me. We like to think of ourselves as outside of everyone else, especially when we get into things like witchcraft, which is an inherently othering practice. It's difficult to feel like you're fully integrated, like you're fully worthy of care, affection, love, things like that. But when you talk to people and you ask very genuinely, hey, I feel like I haven't been where I need to be. Can we talk about these things? Can we talk about where I feel like I'm failing? Can we see where things are going? And can we see how things have been? Honestly, my friends have been a big support with burnout and with imposter syndrome. I constantly hear so many wonderful things said about me, said about my practice, said about anything that I do, from friends who are practitioners and friends who aren't, who I've given readings for, who I've done workings on their behalf, things like that. It is so wonderful to have real, authentic, genuine friends in my life. And it's difficult sometimes when you can't be that same authentic friend for yourself. Trying to be authentic, trying to not fall into bathos, which is essentially mocking yourself. It is continually taking anything that could be genuine and making fun of it and stopping it in its tracks. Is something that I have been trying not to do too much this episode. And it's hard because the world around us is sarcastic. The world around us is delighting in bathos. Hell, look at any Marvel movie. Bottom text. But it's hard to do that work, to be genuine, to be authentic, and to allow yourself to be loved and cared about in an authentic way. And when you do allow that, when you do have those people in your life who you feel like you can trust, who you can talk to, who you believe actually hear you, it is so wonderful. And it is genuinely life-changing. To any of my friends who are listening, I really want to say thank you for supporting me, especially in this past year. Even when I've done really stupid things. There's that bathos right there. But genuinely, thank you. Y'all know who you are. But it's also helpful because a lot of your friends are far more objective than you. They see you and perceive you far better than you might on an external level. Because, in all honesty, while you might think you know yourself best, you oftentimes don't, which is what leads to imposter syndrome. You might know what works for you internally. You might know the things that click for you, but you don't always know what's going on in the external world. You don't always perceive that because our minds perceive time, progress, and things like that in a very internal narrative. We create myths, self-narratives, stories about ourselves, truths about ourselves that we have to hold ourselves to. We create false timelines. We create stories that punish us, stories that paint us to be the bad guy, stories that harm us because we are trying to hold ourselves to a certain standard. And our minds conjure those ideas forward. In particular, for me, I tend to downplay a lot of my experiences, both good and traumatic, in everything. I tend to undersell myself. I've been trying to be a lot better at it because I know people take advantage of that as well. People will take advantage of your kindness and it will lead you more and more internally. Which is why we have to remind ourselves of the people around us who don't take advantage of us, who care about us, and who uplift us. And who see us in a light that's much more positive and more authentically reflective of ourselves. Which I think leads well into my next point, which is remembering that you cannot be perfect 100% of the time. Which is so impossible to realize because we're not perfect. Whoa. But it's helpful to contextualize your flaws, what you perceive as failures, your shortcomings, things like that. Again, like I was saying earlier, over the summer, I was in so many different living situations. I literally moved 3 times last year in the period of 6 months. It was insane. It was intense. It was so difficult. And I was struggling with so many deeply personal things at the time that I could not hold myself to the standard that I had before. I was also literally finishing out online school in 3 different states. One place I was staying did not have Wi-Fi. So I could not hold myself to that standard of absolute perfection 100% of the time. I was literally in one of my friend's cars doing my homework that was due in 2 hours. It was wild while we were road tripping to New Jersey. It was a whole thing. We have fun here. But naturally I couldn't be on top of every sorceress thing I wanted to do. I could not have altars set up. One, living with my parents is a unique and interesting and fascinating experience. And 2, I was all over the country. I was doing all kinds of things. And I didn't give myself any credit for that either. For the sorcery I was able to do that was really effective, that people witnessed. I often forget how much I do. And that's, again, remind yourself of your successes. But, when you are contextualizing that, it's also helpful to think about ways to overcome it rather than just give up, fail, assume that things will never be good again. It's important to work on overcoming things that are thrown your way. It's helpful to actually strategize and plan, because even if you don't follow through with the plan or you change it or anything like that, the active effort is helpful for restructuring how you perceive a difficulty, how you perceive an issue. When you start thinking about, okay, so for example, I didn't have the ability to set up altars. What can we do? Well, I have statues for the primary spirits that I need statues for. I was able to set up 2 altars, quote unquote. One was my Bovida, but because I was able to disguise them a little bit. And I have a forest that I have access to. I'm not to be the most neo-pagan, new age, #Wiccan out there, but, I basically worship nature. The earth is my church. For reference, I'm not a Wiccan. For reference, I don't fully agree with those opinions. However, nature is where I find the strongest connection to my spirits, to the occult, to magic, to sorcery, to whatever. So I moved a lot of things out there. I didn't have permanent altars or anything. I did a lot of my workings there. I had tools that I could work with. I made tools also to work with while I was there. I had all kinds of things that I could just use and apply that didn't require a lot of space, and that I could work on creating a smaller version of my practice that didn't diminish it. So actively trying to overcome your problems will help, because new avenues will start to show up. New ideas will start to form. Realizations will start to happen, basically. You'll start to understand, after contextualizing, after putting yourself in the context of everything going on around you, where things connect. Because when we allow ourselves to just kind of crash out, to kind of just say everything is fucked up, nothing can be fixed, then yeah, nothing can be fixed. Go figure. But when we say, okay, everything is fucked up, but it can be fixed. Let's see where things line up. Let's strategize. Let's talk to other people. Let's bring our ideas to friends. Let's bring our ideas to family. Let's bring our ideas around and see what we can get going. Voice your struggles, please. But one thing that can also just help with contextualizing and reframing how you think is literally go outside. Go outside and stop bed rotting. It's been said forever, however, literally the way that my mood would change when I would go outside and be in the forest and feel sun on my skin, feel wind in my hair, breathe air, shit like that. It literally changed everything. When I was doing that Daimon rite over the summer, it changed so much about how I was able to overcome my problems. It changed so much about how I was able to frame myself in the context of everything. It allowed me to think and a lot more clearly, a lot more properly, and it really honestly just allowed me to breathe. When you don't breathe, problems start occurring. And I don't just mean literal breath. I mean we need to have points of breath in our day, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. But also, if you're bedrotting, if you're doom scrolling, if you're not doing anything, then things aren't gonna get better. You have to do magic to be good at magic, I think that the biggest struggle for me is that I am so I am so on my computer all the time. It is a problem I'm working to fix. Part of it is not having a ton of energy. Part of it is fatigue from a couple different things. Part of it is also having that motivation. And that motivation sometimes is hard to get every single day. That motivation sometimes goes away. It ebbs and flows, which is totally normal. But there is a level of control that you have. And I think the biggest thing for me was stopping myself from just scrolling on Instagram. I have made an active effort to stop using Instagram as much. However, I'm still struggling with YouTube and Discord. But I think the biggest thing that has always helped me is having an internet fast, basically. Fasting from the internet is something that I do for ritual. It's something that is also just super healthy to do. I had the privilege of doing it for 3 days a while ago. 2 years ago, I think now. And that was super awesome. That was super worth it. That's not so possible for me right now. And I imagine it's not super possible for everyone in the world. But you can limit it. You can take your fast and start to limit it a little bit, Let's say you go a day where you just don't open any social media. You tell all your friends, you tell everyone, hey, I'm going off social media for this whole day. But you check your email, You tell people if you need to text me. I will check it at a designated point for a designated amount of time. Give yourself 30 minutes to an hour where you check or are open to checking your phone or your texts or whatever. Don't engage with social media. Don't engage with YouTube or TikTok, Rednote, whatever anyone is using these days. I'm not that old. I'm probably younger than most people listening, in all honesty, but I digress. And replace your internet time with something practical, something hands-on. What I replaced my morning doom scroll with was meditation for 10 minutes. I really like that. I just struggle with it sometimes. It's something that I'm going to try and integrate daily now. Meditating for 10 minutes, giving a focus for your meditation, super helpful. I like 10 minutes. It's a good amount of time. I like getting in depth with meditation. But, if you can only do 5 minutes, that's also totally fine. But no less than 5 minutes. Bodily sensation is a good practice to have. It, 1, develops your psychic senses. 2, it helps you assess yourself and kind of notice where tension is, notice where any issues might be. And in doing that, you can more effectively help yourself. You can even meditate on what that tension is, scry it a little bit, just experiencing it. But what's important is that bed rotting is stopping you from serving. There is nothing wrong with flopping. What's wrong is preventing a potential serve. If you could eat, then you must eat. If you could serve, then you must serve. Motivational speaking is our next point. Motivational speaking is super weird for me, low-key. But, after trying it out for a while, it's kind of started working. It is positive gaslighting, which is undermining it. That's not accurate, just so we're all aware. But for example, when you speak positively about yourself, you're forcing yourself to think positive things about you. Going back to our writing down success points, and it forces your brain to kind of shift gears, and it forces you to actually be I kind of am all that. I kind of am that bitch, you know? And I find motivational music is super helpful. I'm going to put one of my favorite motivational musics in the music segment of this episode, but motivational music is huge for me. I love and adore music a ton, but motivational music helps me out so much when I'm pissed at someone, especially. Because, like, I'll share a tidbit from my therapist from, I don't want to think about how long ago it was actually, but a long time ago, way too long ago, he shared this piece of information that actually, like, really changed my life a lot. He was my first therapist, and this was a long time ago, but he said, depression is anger turned inwards. So when you allow that anger to go inwards, when you allow it to fester within you, it starts to form a depression. And I definitely noticed that, both in myself and others. But the motivational music gives me an outlet for it. Like, I love putting on, like, super angry music. This isn't going to be in the music section, but shout out to Hex So Heavy by Bambi Thug. S tier. Whenever I feel pissed off at someone, I put that on and I feel a little bit better. But hyping yourself up, you know, if you feel like you're all that, then you are all that. It's like so weird, and like it's so hard for a lot of people to like actually integrate, and it's one that like I'm still working at. But it is like so helpful. Also, playing it in ritual or before ritual. I have a lot of motivational music that I will play that's like themed. Green Lung definitely features heavily in this, but having like sort of an anthem low key is helpful. Having energetic music like puts you into an energized mood. It wakes you up. That's like the biggest thing, in all honesty, that I found is it wakes you the fuck up. It makes you want to do shit. If you're listening to like higher energy music, there's a lot of like Brazilian music that I listen to that I cannot sit still, so it makes me do stuff, you know? There is a lot of just like hyperpop is super helpful. Metal is super helpful. Not like doom metal necessarily, but like, or I don't do sludge. Sludge does not make me motivated. Power metal is a big thing for several people. I don't super listen to power metal, but like, you know, anything that like hypes you up, that makes you feel like you want to move and dance and stuff, it will make you move and dance. It will make you want to do things. So if you put that on when you need to get something done, it will make you want to get something done. If you like hype yourself up, you know, don't be delusional, you know, don't like say I'm gonna do it, so I've done it already. You know, you have to like actually do the thing. Hype yourself up, make yourself feel nice. Self-care is being cunty. Bottom text. Self-care is being cunty. The first step to being cunty is feeling cunty. You know? Few know this. Yeah, that's my that's my pep talk. You're a bad bitch. You deserve to be a bad bitch. And if you're a bad bitch, you'll be a badder witch. Yeah. But no, like, music before ritual that, like, either puts you into the mood or energizes you is very helpful. I have all kinds of music that I listen to depending on what I'm doing. I don't often play music in ritual. It's something that I'm starting to warm up to a little bit. But music will have its own episode. Probably more than one at this point. But kind of on the opposite end of, you know, hyping yourself up, being that bitch, is relax. This is the hardest advice to receive. So we're going to break it down quite a bit, go through a lot of different points. While it's important to go outside, while it's important to be active, it's also important to take rest. Because you cannot be active all the time. You have to be okay with not being active all the time. That's how you burn out. Taking time is really the hardest thing you can do because everything feels against you in terms of taking a break, in terms of breathing. Hayao Miyazaki describes this as Ma, which is just space, time. It's a term to describe movies and describe points in film, but it's a philosophy that I've taken deeply into my life. Having moments of Ma, having moments of breath throughout your day, throughout everyday life is important. Just time where you're allowed to exist, where you can breathe, where you're not filling your head with content, where you're not trying to do something, where you're just sitting, existing, being. I find that this is hard to do, but I try to take things like walks to experience this point of Ma. I do things like just draw. Drawing used to be a big hobby of mine. It's something that I'm trying to get back into, and it's difficult, but just doodling, drawing, doesn't have to be good. Whatever you want it to be. You know, if you quote unquote can't draw, try making a Zentangle. Big scary word, but it is literally just a random doodle that you build up more and more. New patterns, different shapes. It's fun, it's relaxing. But, the biggest thing that I think happens a lot for me is money anxiety causing me not to relax, because you feel like you're wasting money, or you are actively wasting money because everything costs money to do. And like I said, money sorcery is a bit difficult for me. But you can relax without spending money, and you can work to reframe it so that it doesn't feel like you're wasting money. Again, going on walks is free. The outdoors is free. Enjoy it. If you're in a city, try and find some natural space. It's difficult. I really hate being in a city. I really hate it. It is the worst for me. I thrive in wilderness, in forest, rural areas, things like that. But, there's also things to explore in a city. You can look around for places. You can discover new spots, There's also, again, meditation. That's free. And there's a lot of different ways to meditate. Active walking meditation is a huge thing for me. I am able to enter a meditative state extraordinarily easily, to the point that I am often a near trance state quite frequently. It's very easy to slip into. But I also have cultivated that over a really long time and through other practices and things like that. So can't fully just expect everyone to do that. But, you can meditate. You can sit with your spirits. You can call them and talk to them. If you have a particular deity that you really want to cultivate a stronger relationship with, you can just sit and be with them, be in meditation, call them, do whatever you need to do. If there's this other type of spirit that's around you, let's say you have familiars. One thing that I did was go on walks with my familiars. I would just call them. I would enter into that state safely while walking, engage with them, learn from them, things like that. There's a lot of things you can do. I know there's not a lot of third spaces anymore, but if you have access to one, go to them. The library is a wonderful place. And even if you don't have a library, bookstores can sometimes function as a third space. While there is that incentive to buy things, and it is expected that you buy things, you can sometimes, depending on how cool the owner is, treat it almost like a library. I have done that plenty of times. Find those places where you feel safe, that don't cost you money, that aren't overstimulating, that aren't full of other people. that are quiet, that are nice, and that you can breathe and relax in. I find that I often feel unproductive while trying to take time off to relax, which is really hard to overcome. Productivity is a weird thing because it is kind of a myth, but that's not to say that you just can do nothing with your life. Yes, girl, give us nothing. You have to be actively engaging in life. You can trick yourself into being productive, quote unquote, because there's a lot of other things that are necessary. And fun fact, relaxing is productive because if you don't relax, you cannot do the things you need to do. Hard lesson, horrible lesson, I hate it, but it is true. Reading is often my go-to. It's good to read things that are non-occult. I try to read fiction. It's difficult, honestly, to read fiction sometimes because my brain is always like hardwired for nonfiction, for academic texts, for esoteric things. But, there's plenty of audiobooks out there too. If you can't either afford a physical book or you just don't have access to the one that you want. Lots of audiobooks, both free and for small fees, depending on where you go. But reading is super helpful. It's grounding. It's both grounding and gives you a sense of escape, especially for fiction. It's helpful, truly, as like a cognitive reset. I also really love going to stores. I know that's like one that costs money. I mean, not necessarily. I also just like looking at things. Though it can make me stress about money. Take a bus trip, go somewhere fun. There's lots of things to do in the world that if we do them, our brains kind of have a short reset. And while it can feel unproductive to like go and do these things, what I do is make a goal. For example, like if I'm going out to a store, I'll be like, oh, I'm going to go find this thing, but it's okay if I don't find this thing because I'm also going to have secondary goals. That was a big thing for me recently, is having multiple destinations with multiple different goals so that are near each other, so that it doesn't feel like I'm wasting my time traveling farther, because I don't have a car. I have to bus and walk everywhere. Uber's too goddamn expensive. I mean, I can do it, but I digress. It is stressful walking 45 minutes to a destination and not having anything. But if you look at other places, if you have like other options, it makes things less stressful. Makes you feel more productive, especially if you also have things along the way. If you're walking, for example, it helps you have purpose to what you're doing, and feeling purposeful is extremely helpful for me with resting. I am a workaholic. I love doing things constantly. I hate sitting still. But I can do a podcast because I know this podcast is something I want to do. This podcast is something that I can control. It is a real product that I can put out into the world. I hate that terminology, but it's helpful. It is something that feels real. Having projects that you are building up towards that you will achieve over time is really helpful. Don't do a million projects at once. You'll die, IRL, but having a handful of projects that can be worked on simultaneously off to the side it's really nice, in all honesty. But when you're going out to these places, make sure that you're open to whatever comes your way. Make sure that you're open to whatever happens. Don't try to force something to happen. That's not relaxing. That's still working. You can also make goals that aren't so project-based or so like material-based. You can go out with the goal of making friends. I love doing that. Friendship is magic, guys. Fun fact. Whoa. But like, for example, I will oftentimes go to parties because I like meeting new people. I don't come off as a party person either, so it makes things really interesting and I can do some fun social experimenting. That's the more weird and insane side of me, but I digress. Moving forward though, it is also probably difficult, and you're probably thinking this like, well, how much time and when can I actually take time off? I would love to be unemployed because I would never have to go into work. I would never have to do anything. However, I have to pay my bills, which is the worst part. I think the biggest thing for me is when nothing is bringing me happiness anymore, when I feel depression just like really sinking in, that's when I know I have to like do something to break that, to overcome that. It's when I feel like I'm hitting more walls than going forward, when I feel more blockages, when I feel like I'm not creative anymore, when I feel like I can't do anything, that's when I need to relax. Relaxing can also be extraordinarily helpful because during that time you're relaxing, you're able to bring in new, fresh ideas to your life. Don't overwhelm yourself, but watching a TV show is actually not unproductive, especially if you're in my field. It allows your brain to reset. It allows your mind to start thinking of other things. Fictional narratives really help us because they activate our problem solving skills. They allow us to have an external experience of something else that we can problem solve through, because every story, every narrative is built on conflict. We problem solve through and we get rewarded by seeing that problem either being solved or beginning to see other problems show up and us problem solving alongside the characters. Mysteries are really good for this. Sorcerers love a good mystery. That's why it's called the occult. Secret, hidden, mystery. Having new experiences as well, new media, new places, new environments, that resets our brain. It refreshes us and it gives us something else to do with our mental space. It gets our creativity flowing as well. I know that like whenever I feel burnt out with spell work, when I feel like I'm not getting where I need to go, genuinely, I sometimes find the most inspiration by watching something and hearing a line that just hits in a certain way that reframes how I'm doing my practice. Even if it's not like related in any way to sorcery, we have to fill our brains with things other than magic and other than esoteric books, tomes, grimoires, things like that. We have to have other additional sources of input, fresh media, other facets of our life, because we will be burnt out so fast if all we focus on is I gotta do sorcery at the Mercury hour right when it goes direct on Wednesday during the 8th hour or whatever. You know, it's helpful to also try new foods, which I struggle with because I have an eating disorder, avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, but it's helpful to try something outside of your safe foods on occasion, because when we get in the habit of eating the same thing over and over again, one, it's not super nutritional all the time. Two, we aren't forming new pathways. We aren't having new experiences with all of our senses. And taste is very hard to have a lot of senses with, have a lot of experiences with, I should say. So having new foods, even just like fun foods like desserts, hell, even like old foods that you haven't had since you were a kid. I'm literally going to be making dirt soon. For those who don't know, dirt is like a kindergarten snack with like pudding. Some people put like flakes of brownies in it and then gummy worms. It's super cute. That shit resets my brain. That shit makes me feel like a person again. Not to be hashtag young pilled, but doing things for yourself that are healing to past wounds, that is actually genuinely helpful. Giving yourself opportunities that you didn't have before, even if it's eating a kindergarten snack. It's cringe, but it works. But like I was saying earlier, there is no such thing as being unproductive. It is about how you frame everything. Locking in is a matter of changing your perspective, with the caveat: you cannot cope, you cannot LARP, you cannot pretend that you are locking in. You don't have to be all together all the time. You don't have to be like going 1,000% all the time. Please be kind to yourself, but still be doing something. You have to do the work for the work to be done. You don't have to always be doing the work. And also, oftentimes, you are doing the work without thinking about it. You know, if you're reading a grimoire, if you are reading a text, if you're listening to an esoteric podcast like this one, you're technically still doing the work. And not just in like the coping sense, you are actively problem solving. You are actively thinking about, what can I do? How can I apply this? Engage your problem solving skills and allow yourself plenty of grace. You know, when you aren't actively, gearing up for a ritual, you can be thinking about what it is that you want to do with your magic. What's the next step? Is there initiations you're pursuing? Okay, let's look up how to pursue them. You don't have to be initiating to be locked in, but yeah, how do I pursue an initiation in, let's say, how do I pursue an initiation into Gardnerian Wicca? Oh, here's Gardnerian covens in my area. Oh, here's resources for that. Let me start making contacts. Hi, I'm interested in this. I never looked into Gardnerian Wicca. I looked into Alexandrian Wicca at one point, and I know like a couple Gardnerian Wiccans, or like have access to them. I'm not super close with them, but first thing that came to mind. But whatever it is, oh, I want to work the Black Pullet, which is a thing that I'm doing right now, fun fact. I want to work the Black Pullet. Oh, I'm going to read the Grimoire. Oh, I'm going to listen to podcasts. I'm going to listen to or read blog posts. I'm going to watch YouTube videos on it. I'm going to start looking up the parallel skills. How do I properly treat and paint cloth for the circle? Jewelry making if you're going the jewelry making route for it. Things like that. Building up those skills, practicing at them is still doing the work. You just haven't done the whole ritual itself yet. You have to have steps before you can actually get to the thing you want. But giving yourself that grace and leeway is important. Again, being unproductive isn't real. It's about how you look at it. And it is hard to take a step back from magic, but you, again, aren't always doing that. Speak to your spirits about what your current needs are. Speak to them about, hey, I don't have the energy to do daily offerings. Can we make them weekly at whatever point during the week? Sometimes setting goals is helpful. Sometimes setting specific dates is helpful. Sometimes it's not, and there's always you might end up busy on something, Focus on what's most necessary. Allow yourself to reset. Think about what's most feasible for you right now. For me, I have a very vast and large practice with so many different things going on. It is hard to manage all of that. So I find time. I make smaller promises. I change how I do things. I have reworked my daily practice so many times. So many times. It has changed fundamentally, drastically, so much over like even the past year. It is okay to change things. It is okay to add things. It is okay to move things around. What's important is that you're doing what you want, how you want, and how you are most able. And speaking of most able, if you struggle with a chronic illness, please, for the love of God, do not feel like you have to pull the weight of the world. I know that's so much easier said than done, but please remind yourself every so often about this. Please, for my sanity, at the very least. Chronic illness is so difficult to struggle with. I have so many friends who struggle with it. You do not need to overcompensate. You do not need to feel like you need to do everything for everyone all of the time. Please do not do this. It is bad for you. So now that I've talked your ear off about all the things you should do, let's apply it specifically to myself. Again, I had horrific imposter syndrome, especially during the summer, after all the moving, traveling, all of that bullshit. I still struggle with like horrific bed rot. I'm trying to get better at it. I am actively putting things in place for that. Specifically, again, I'm working on waking up earlier. This eclipse cycle has been awful. I'm filming this what the hell? I'm recording this on the 14th of March, so just after the eclipse. This eclipse cycle was very difficult for me, or like leading up to the eclipse was really difficult for me. Bed rot became a whole problem. I'm implementing things. Again, that meditation, waking up earlier, going to bed earlier, finding what things tire me out more and trying to do them less, or trying to balance them out, manage them, do them at times before I'm super fatigued. All those things are helpful. Also, again, bringing in fresh experiences, reading new books. I haven't been super great about reading new books, but at least fiction, that is, I should say. Lots of new books I have been reading, though. Been loving the Verdes Genie book, zine, publication. I'm reading volume 6 right now. That's one I've started on, at least. Also reading 13 Pathways of Occult Herbalism by Daniel Schulke, or Schulk. People pronounce it different ways around me. I've always said Schulke. I keep trying to read Veridarium Umbris. We'll see if that happens. But also watching new shows. I just finished Invincible Season 3. Yeah. Making new friends. Again, after moving, I've made so many new friends. New experiences have come from that. I'm traveling a bunch. I'm going to a brand new place next week that I've never been before. I'm really excited. Well, when this comes out, I'll have already been there, so. But there's so much going on in my life. There's so much always happening. And when I take time to reflect on all that and process all that, it's really good. It allows me to understand myself better. I find that I process externally a lot. I especially process through media. Go figure, again, dramatic writing major. Who would have guessed? Experiences allow you to have new ideas, both in writing, in music, and in magic. And I think just reframing all of that, reframing myself, putting myself in context with the narrative around me, not just the narrative I make up about myself, and what I do actively, what I'm actively working towards. The fact that I am making this podcast, it's been awesome. It has been really helpful, especially, I went through a lot, both good and bad, for a while. I'm still kind of going through a lot. It's important to remind myself that it's totally okay to not be a hyper-productive girl boss queen, It's okay. Everything is okay, gang. So, on that note, I just kind of want to close things out here. Kind of bared my soul several times in this. Let me know what you guys thought. Let me know anything, yeah. First episode. I hope that you all enjoyed this. I look forward to hearing your thoughts, your comments, suggestions, any ideas for this show. I'm really, really happy to finally be doing this. You can find me at AIDENTHEVVITCH at Aiden the Witch, or Vavitch, on Instagram, on YouTube. My email is aidenthevavitch1@gmail.com. That's the number 1, not spelled out. I'm reworking my website, which may or may not be up by the time this episode is out. If it is, that's Aiden the Witch, again spelled in that same way, .com. It's technically up right now, but I'm reworking it. I offer spellwork services, divination services, primarily through cartomancy. I'm working on several new things. I'm going to be more active on the blog posts. Eventually I'm going to have courses. That's not quite there yet. But if you would like to book anything with me, please feel free to reach out to me. You don't necessarily need to book through the website right now, but I offer all kinds of things, from any sort of divination that you might need. Feel free to reach out to me for it. For divination, I tend to specialize in identifying whether a spirit is there or not, whether a curse is there or not, as well as how to overcome any sort of activity with that, as well as identifying spirits around you for the most part, barring some things that I cannot confirm due to not having certain initiations in the traditions I'm in, as well as being able to, in general, help with anything with love, money, work, blockages, all those good things. For spell work, I have a lot more wide range, open to doing all kinds of work. The only thing I don't do is level return work right now. Feel free to reach out to me either through direct message on Instagram, over through my email. If you have any suggestions for this podcast, any comments on it, feel free to let me know. And for our Burning Out Man Festival, that's what I decided to call our music segment for this episode, we have Dreamer by Lao Fei, which is a little bit more personal, why I chose that one, but it very much encapsulates how I've been feeling and sort of my journey through crashing out, burning out, and rising again. For our second pick, it is It Girl by Alia's Interlude. That is my big motivator song. That is my I'm cunty. I don't gaff. Fun fact, I actually am not a gaffer on set. That song is a huge motivational song for me. Whenever I hear it, I snap back in, I log back in. I'm like, okay, yeah, actually I am cunt bitch. Thank you all for watching. Looking forward to hearing all your thoughts and seeing you all hopefully in the next one. So mote it be.